Hey, brother, I just finished listening to your July 5th episode. Man, I just absolutely love your content, man. It gives me value every time I listen to it. It gives me a different perspective on how I view some of the stuff that I do. It's just always good, man. And I want to keep telling you the same thing over and over and over. It does affect people, it does change people's lives. And really do appreciate all of the effort that you're putting into that because I know that you really got better things to do than this, but yet you still sacrifice that time and do it. So hats off to you, bro.
Greetings, empowered investors, and welcome to episode 2464. I have got an old guest and client, wonderful guy, back on the show with us today. And he just told me that the first time he was on the show, we were in the double digits, and now we're in the quadruple digits for show numbers. So it was before we even hit 100 episodes, and that's great. It's my pleasure to welcome back our client, great guy, David Porter. Dave, how you doing?
I'm doing great, but the way you started the introduction, you said an old guy,
Yeah.
which is also true. Which is also true.
Well, you are retired now,
I
in
am.
theory, at least.
Yes. Partially in thanks to you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. So you started buying properties from us back, I want to say around 2008. Would that be
Correct.
correct? Yeah.
Yep.
Great. And I remember the first day I met you, we were in our then office in
Right.
Southern California. And Sarah, one of our investment counselors, came and kind of knocked on my door. And I was really stressed out. I had a million things on my list to do. And she knocks on the door and says, Jason, you got to meet this client of ours because he's got a metric for investing.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Which we did a show on, and it's
Yep.
called the free lunch metric. You were buying properties in Indianapolis at the time.
Correct.
And you want to just tell us about that? It's just such a funny story, you know?
Sure. So this concept of buying properties outside my own backyard was very new to me, right? I did have a couple of rental properties already in Southern California, which is where I live. And I'm like, well, how am I going to do a proper evaluation of these properties? So it was just getting to the point where you could, go and find all kinds of different information with Zillow and so forth. And
Zillow was pretty new back then.
it
I
was.
mean,
It
yeah.
was. And from Zillow, you could link into greatschools.com, right? And so I started poking around on everything, and I kind of noticed a strong correlation with the percentage of students in the local area that would be going to local schools for a property you'd be considering.
Mhm.
That percentage, if it was in excess of 50%, in other words, if more than 50% of the local students qualified for free lunch, it wasn't in the quality of an area that I wanted to buy in.
Mhm.
Okay. So I just kind of used that as I was scanning through, I mean, you kind of have focused more on, some of the nicer areas yourself, but also offered options for even, other types of properties. Those are great properties, just not stuff I was interested in getting involved with, Section 8s and stuff like that. Higher risk, higher return potentially, right?
Yeah,
But
sure.
I was working full time in an executive position. And I didn't have much time to deal with this stuff, although I always use property managers. I also wanted to have a pride of ownership in all the properties. And even today, like if any of my kids lived in any of my properties, I would be good with it. They're all in
Mhm.
great areas, they're in safe areas, and they're real solid neighborhoods. And you just have fewer problems, right?
Yeah.
So that was it. And that was my cutoff point, 50%. So, and surprisingly, I think especially now, it's fairly easy to get free lunch, right?
Right.
And so you'd be surprised even what you would consider some of the best areas, 20 something percent of the kids qualify for free lunch. So anyway, that was my free lunch metric, 50%, and I've never violated it.
Yeah, that's great. That's
Yeah,
a great story. That's a great story. So David, you purchased, I think, 20 properties or so through us. You did Indianapolis. That was your first one where you ventured outside of your hometown, right?
correct,
Okay.
correct.
And what other markets?
Phoenix,
Okay. So Phoenix and Indy were just those two?
just those two, and I already owned a couple in California.
Okay, good. So you are in three markets essentially,
Three markets.
basically. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
good stuff.
right.
Let's just kind of go rewind a little bit more, and I'll ask you, how did you hear about us? I assume you were listening to the podcast back then, and that must have been in 2007, or did you find us?
Yeah, that would have been so actually what happened, it would have been late 2007 to early 2008. You were actually running radio commercials back in those
I
days.
remember that was the old days. Yeah,
Yeah. And I heard that, and I've been in logistics and transportation almost my entire working career, some form of it, right?
yeah.
I took a brief respite from that, and I was in financial services for a while. And that was at the time that the global financial markets were just melting down.
I
Right?
was just about to ask you about that. So
Oh,
we were literally in the midst of the Great Recession, the global financial crisis,
that's right.
and you were buying properties. That took some real courage.
Well, it kind of did, other than the fact that I had been selling financial products, stocks and bonds to people, and that was no place to be.
Right.
And I knew long-term cash wasn't anywhere to be. And at the time, I mean, the prices came down, came down, came down so much. You might remember this conversation. We could buy properties back then far less than the cost of construction.
Right.
And I said, well, the properties could go down more. But the rents, they weren't really collapsing, maybe a
Yeah.
little bit, but
Right.
not very much at all. I said, really, what I cared about was building a cash flow machine.
Hmm.
And if the prices went down a little bit more on the basic property, I'd still be great with the rent. So, I mean, there's no such thing as a sure thing, but I didn't see how I could lose. So I had plenty of people telling me I was crazy, A, for investing a lot of money in that kind of a market. Secondly, being an LA guy, you're buying in Indiana?
Yeah.
What's with that?
Right.
But I was just like, that at the time was the best cash flowing area in the country. I love the area, 50%, my free lunch metric. So I just went in and bought 16 properties in Indiana.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. And then how much longer after you bought the 16 in Indiana? How much? And by the way, we're still in that market after all these years, if you
Oh,
can believe
great.
that. I mean,
Yeah.
that's been one of our longest running markets, that and Memphis. Those
Okay.
two
Great.
have
Yeah.
just been perennial machines for our clients. But how long before you started investing in Phoenix?
That was a little bit more towards the tail end. I started buying late 2007, early 2008 in Indy. I think I bought it wasn't the tail end. I think I bought one in 2011 and one in 2014.
Hmm. Okay. And that was the Phoenix market, right? Yeah.
Yeah, Gilbert to be specific.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember we were doing business there. So, over all these years of being a real estate investor, you're a buy and hold investor, you've still got all the same properties that you bought. You didn't
Correct.
sell any of them. Tell us about some of the experiences. And, there's always good, bad, and ugly. It's not perfect by any means. It's just
Sure.
better than everything else. That's what I always say.
Kind of
And
like capitalism, right? Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And that quote I think was a Winston Churchill. Capitalism isn't perfect; it's just better than everything else, right?
Right.
So I agree. Any tools or techniques? Of course, the free lunch metric was one of your early techniques. That's
Right.
great. Any others over the years?
So I would say, going back to my first two prior to investing with you, I'd gone through a process where I kind of always wanted to do it, and I'm reading all the books and trying to learn. And just like at some point, I said, you know what? I'm going to do the best job I can evaluating these, and no, it won't be perfect, but I want to get in the game. Are you going to get in the game? Are you really going to do this or not do it? So that was an important step for me. And then interestingly, when I started, I bought two properties, and they weren't cheap. They're in Southern California. I mean, at the time, now it would seem cheap for based on what
Right.
I paid. So I think just get in the game, right? I tried self-managing originally. And I think if you're going to do that, you have to realize you have to be prepared to, dedicate maybe not serious time, but at least serious attention to it.
Yeah.
I found out that me and my wife were not the best property
Yeah.
managers.
You've always had property managers, right? Over the
Always.
years, yeah.
Yeah. And so after
Except for when you said you tried self management. So
I
I'm going to
tried
correct that. Yeah.
self-management and it worked great until it didn't. And I had to take somebody to court. I didn't even know how to
Uh-huh.
do that,
Yeah.
all that stuff, right? So
Okay.
at that point, I went to a property manager and said, "Hey, if you can get me out of this mess, you can just manage these for me. That would be
Sure.
great." And
Yeah.
so I haven't managed a property for over 20 years now.
Mhm.
But even with property managers, I guess another important lesson is you've got to manage your property managers,
No
right?
question.
Real estate investing, people call it passive. I mean, I don't dedicate a ton of time to it,
Yeah.
but don't think you can just kind of ignore it and not pay attention to it, right?
Nothing is passive.
No,
I even say a bank account is not passive. And I've
no.
told the story before. I've had bank accounts over the years that really required management. In fact, I will tell you, I am in litigation with a credit union I banked with. I am suing them because they literally distributed $234,000 of my money out of an account that they shouldn't have distributed. I mean,
Oh
it's
my,
insane. Like, there's
yeah,
no such thing as a passive thing. Banks during the Great Recession were going out of business left and right. And I got letters saying, this happened 7 times to me, that you've got to move your money. This bank is going under. We're transferring it to so and so. Your
right.
account's going to be different. You're going to lose this. I had to deal with all this stuff. And taxes and inflation are eating you alive in a bank
That's
account.
right.
And that would be considered by anybody to be the most quote unquote passive thing you could possibly do. That's why I give that example. Of course, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, that all requires lots of attention.
Right. Well, I'll give you another example. So, what I was involved with was index funds when I
Mm-hmm.
was a financial
Yeah.
manager. And so there is this school of thought, passive management, and
Right.
invest and relax, risk appropriate portfolio and just relax. That's better for sure than active trading because
Sure.
nobody wins in the long term. Everybody's got a good story or two, but they don't tell you the bad stories, right?
Right. Right.
But even with that, with all the hackers and everything, you better be checking in on your account once in a while
Oh, yeah.
because, you just got to do your due diligence. So anyway, with the property managers, I've had to switch one or two of them out. Not a big deal. There's plenty of property managers, and you can get referrals like from your group or other people that you get to know. So I've had to swap out a couple of property managers over time. But, so that would be it. Manage your property managers, invest in properties that you're proud of, that you like. I like my properties. Like for my spreadsheet, I've got a spreadsheet with all my properties, the financial metrics, my insurance and
Mm-hmm.
taxes and all that. I've got a little picture at the top of cell A or row A going all the way across. I've got pictures of every little one because I like looking at them. I feel good about them. If they
Yeah.
were ugly properties in a bad area of town, why would you want to look at them, right?
Yeah.
So,
Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah.
those are just a couple things. The other thing I will say, I think the people that have gotten burned in real estate went in without an adequate buffer.
Mm-hmm.
And so you don't want to do that. Save up a bit of money so you have a cushion. So if somebody doesn't pay the rent, because that's going to happen at some point.
You're not going to be forced to sell or get into trouble.
Right.
We actually have, since the old days, I know you're familiar with our property tracker program, and
Yes, I've used it. Yeah.
you use it. Okay, great. We've actually added to the pro forma the minimum 4% reserves. So of the purchase price of that house, you've got to earmark 4%. It's not that you invest, just money you keep in the bank for emergencies, for vacancies, for surprise repair items and things like that. Because too many people get their whole plan derailed because
Yeah.
they just don't have a buffer. They don't have a cushion. And that's just crazy that they
Right.
allow that to happen. Yeah.
And so the people that I've met that have gotten killed in real estate was just because of that. They went out on a limb, and it was back in the days when the market was just going up, 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 up,
Right.
up. I can't lose. I can't lose.
Yeah. They were the
FOMO.
appreciation investors rather
Yes.
than the cash flow investors.
Speculators,
Yeah.
speculators. And they got burned. And then they ended up losing their personal residence as a result of,
Yeah.
silly, taking out a second on that to buy that and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, don't do that. But other than
Let me
that,
just elaborate on that one for a minute. What I always say is nothing extraordinary should have to happen for you to make a good return on your investment.
right.
And by extraordinary in real estate parlance, I mean appreciation. If you're expecting some massive appreciation, you are part of the greater fool theory. Okay. And, the greater fool theory, works until it doesn't. It's basically a Ponzi scheme. No matter what I pay for this property, some greater fool will come along and pay more. You shouldn't view it that way. Just buy and hold properties, just like you've done, David, just like I've done. Excellent point. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love the appreciation, but I view it like the icing on the cake. It's like, oh
Absolutely.
yeah, this feels good, and I do have this thing. I run and say, oh, they're all worth that. Now I realize, of course, what they're worth now is not what you would get in your pocket after taxes and commissions and all that other kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But it's nice to see, I mean, boy, since those '07, '08 days, doubling, tripling, quadrupling.
Oh my gosh. Now I want to mention that. So you were buying properties. I remember one of the properties you bought, vaguely. I think you bought it was basically a new home through our network in Indianapolis for like $80,000, a big 5-bedroom family house.
You got a good memory. I remember this conversation it's been 15 years since we've had this discussion or more.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that property today is probably worth 350.
Yeah, bingo. Yeah. So that was
I just guessing, but
yeah, that was an $80,000 property, 3,000 square feet. I remember you and I talking about it because the insurance company wanted to charge me so much money to insure it.
I know. They wanted to charge you the replacement cost and you bought below the replacement cost.
Yeah,
that was
far below. I said, why would I pay so much insurance? Because to replace this, it would cost that much money. And
I told you that was a good problem to have.
That was a good thing. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good thing. So yeah, and that honestly was, fairly typical.
That was basically $29 a square foot you were paying.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
We did a lot of 20s and 30s back then. Yeah.
It's amazing.
And that was an unusual time,
But David, here's the key for the people listening. Okay. Look, folks, there is never a time when you know anything for sure.
Right.
During that time, we have to really remind ourselves of how negative the news was.
That's right.
I mean, it was like the world was falling apart. The country of Iceland went bankrupt. I mean, just think about that. Lehman went bankrupt. There were omnibus giant, nearly trillion or $1 trillion bailouts by the government. Hank Paulson was the Treasury Secretary. Everybody was talking about every conspiracy in the world. Stock markets around the whole planet had plummeted. I mean, we thought this was the end of the world. All of the news was this is the end of the world. Yet you had the courage to buy these properties and look at where you are now.
Well, thanks. And something else, and I'll give you credit for this, Jason, is you taught me something. And what you said is your good credit is an asset.
Yeah.
And in my case, it was an untapped asset. And I've always been very conservative, still am. And at that time, I owed zero on any property, my rental properties, anything. I had money saved and all that. And not only, I borrowed, it doesn't sound like a lot of money anymore, but, over $1 million and used that in small little down payments not small little, but, 50% down payments to buy a whole bunch of houses. And nobody was doing that back then. And it seemed like
it was hard to get financing. The banks, when you were buying, David, the banks didn't even want to finance the properties. They were limiting loans to saying you could only have one, and then it went to two, and then to four other loans for rental properties beyond your personal residence. I mean, it was like the whole market was just shrinking, and everybody was worried.
Super risk averse. So almost all those were foreclosures that we bought, almost all of them. And then, so the other thing that I would share with your viewers is there's foreclosure opportunities here and there still today. And
hardly any right now.
Yeah.
Hardly any.
To the extent you run into them, what I found is you'd see a lot of kind of just surface problems, like, the carpeting's trash, the walls have holes punched in them. These are all easy things if they're in nice areas to get fixed. And it's great for you because they don't show well. I remember one of those properties in Indiana, somebody had taken a can of paint. They were mad, I guess, because they were losing their house.
Threw it all over,
paint all over the cabinets. That's like, all right, these are like a couple $1,000s here and there, whatever. And at the end of the day, you still get a great economic. You probably want to repaint and get new carpeting anyway. So to the extent they trash that, who cares? It's great if it doesn't show well, gives you more opportunity. So we did
Mhm.
some of those.
Yeah, yeah, it's really something. But I think the key secret to your success, I think, is the fact that you were willing to do it when all of the news was negative. Everybody would have discouraged you, and nobody would have faulted you for saying, "Oh no, this is." I don't want to be investing in real estate. This is too risky. I mean, that was a really risky, crazy time. Like every piece of news coming out was so discouraging and so negative back then that you just got to remember people need housing. It doesn't matter. Like if there's not enough housing, you're going to do great. And that's the market we're in now even. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy.
The other thing that I loved about Indiana, that southern part of Indiana, if you're still representing that same area, just south of Indy, there's a lot of great suburbs there. And again, the schools are great, shopping's nice. They're beautiful areas with great people.
Yeah.
Employment's growing there. I keep an eye on it. And I really like that area.
Yeah, yeah, good stuff, good stuff. Okay, any tools in particular that you're using or other things that you've learned over the years? I just want to make sure we cover anything else that you want to
Yeah,
share
I
with
guess what
people.
I would say is one of my property managers gives me some, I don't know if I could share the name of the company if you want me to or not.
Maybe not the name, but
Oh,
what's the
okay.
thing? Yeah.
I don't even know the name of the platform they're on. I
Yeah.
don't think it's proprietary, but
Uh-huh.
this give me some great metrics, and I
Okay.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
In Indy, I used to have two property managers there. One wasn't doing so well, so I did consolidate them under one. I like the idea of some diversification, having a couple different property managers, but this particular one has done a good job with me. I've been with them since the beginning, and that's worked out well. So I like the tools they have. For me, the way I manage these properties for myself is I've just got a giant spreadsheet basically with a column for each property with all the accounting categories coming down this way. You can see what they're all doing. I can see the percent return on each of them, at the end of the year. And for my tax man, at the end of the year, it's just a cut and paste, and it gives them everything, all of my expenses. The property managers give you reports on that stuff
Yeah.
with taxes and insurance typically being the largest expenditures, other than when you have a move out and you have some minor rehab, that can be, and that's going to happen. Don't worry about that.
How long are your tenants staying? And what
Oh
do you think
my.
about rent increases? How do you manage that?
Yeah, I rely on the property managers to help me with that. We talk about it when we have a vacancy, what the market's doing and what we need to do to rent it out fairly quickly. The great thing about property managers is since they get a percentage of what the rent is, they do have some incentive to try to get the rents up a bit for you. What we've been seeing though is in Arizona in particular, it's definitely leveled out. I was getting
Oh yeah.
pretty like maximum rent increases every year. This last round wasn't so much that way. I
Yeah.
think things have kind of cooled off a little bit,
I
no pun
agree. Yeah.
intended, in Phoenix. Indy's like, you're not going to get the Southern California or even the Arizona appreciation there. Typically, we've gotten good appreciation, but it's kind of been steady over the years. That's a
Mhm.
steady kind of market that you have there with kind of steady rate
Yep.
increases and steady appreciation on the
It's a
property.
linear market. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it
Very
really is.
linear, very linear,
Yeah.
but solid in returns. Was there ever a time, David, where you thought, this is just too much hassle? Like, I don't want to deal with this. Too many problems. There's a big repair that comes up. You got to replace an air conditioner, a roof, a water heater, even that you just like, I don't want to hassle with this. And maybe that wasn't for your whole portfolio because that wouldn't happen all at once. You're diversified into 22 properties, but maybe you thought, I'm just going to get rid of this property. I just don't like it,
Yeah. You know,
and you never did. You kept them all. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've gone through that thought process before. It does take, the biggest work that you have with this is just the financial tracking for tax reasons and,
Mhm.
paying your tax bills. So you gotta, and you should be keeping good account of all your expenses and stuff like that. but getting that together at the end of the year is a little bit of work. I have all my insurance bills on all properties. I got them synced up so they all come due the same month. So I'm not writing checks all year long, for,
Mhm.
$1,000 for this property and that property. Something else that I did that I think is a good idea, and I'd be interested in what your thoughts are on this. You know, insurance costs have gone up a lot, as you've
Yeah, they've
seen.
actually come down though. Just this year, maybe last year a little bit. They got really bad there for a while, but now they're actually coming down, believe it or not. So that's kind of
Yeah.
nice. Yeah.
I have a renewal that's
On
just
your next
coming
renewal,
up.
you're going to notice it. Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah.
So I went with like max deductible not long ago on all that. I mean, I just want to be insured against kind of a catastrophic loss. And you're never going
Mhm.
to make a claim on a $2,000 thing anyways, because then your rates are going to go through the roof. So
Mhm.
I think kind of taking that max deductible is not a bad strategy. So I did that and it brought my insurance
How much is that?
down.
5,000
Yeah, it's
deductible?
like 5,000, I think, 5 to 10. It depends on the carrier and the
Yeah.
market and stuff like that,
Right.
right? But yeah,
You
I don't
prefer the
think
lower rate. Yeah. With
I
a
honestly, in all these years, I've never filed a claim. I've never,
wow,
I've
that's
never
amazing.
filed a claim. So I just haven't had anything. So
Yeah.
thank God.
Good. Good. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I guess I think that would be the main thing. So I've got my big spreadsheet. I track everything that way. I stay in touch with the property managers. The ones that I have now stay in really good touch with me. I have a good relationship. I send them Christmas presents every year. You know,
Wow.
yeah, I mean, because these guys are very important to me and I appreciate them, right? So I want to have a good relationship.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. Well, hey, thank you for sharing your wisdom of 19 years or so since we first met and you've been
Yeah.
investing with us and really appreciate your business. This is one of the problems with our business. When it seems like we have so many clients that are in your kind of situation, they get up to about 20 properties and then they're just not customers anymore because
Right. Yeah.
they're done. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of funny. It's kind of funny how that works. We've noticed that with a whole bunch of our clients, folks, over the
Yeah.
years. We really have. And it's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, Jason, look what you've done for all these people. I mean, I think they're probably in a similar situation. They've got a
Yeah.
nice kind of cash flow machine, and that's what they wanted,
Yeah.
and that's what they've got. And I mean, I've thought before, should I just roll all these up and go buy an apartment complex or do something like that? And I don't want,
Well, you would have suffered massively with that in the past few years.
okay.
So
All right. It's good to
that is
know.
not doing well, the
Okay.
multifamily component now. Everybody just wants a single family home. And one of the other great things about your single family homes is the tenants are dispersed. So they're not talking to each other. They're not ganging
Right.
up on you. There's no mutinies. There's no rent strikes.
Right.
They're all like individual relationships. And I really
Right.
love that about single family. I've owned both, but
Yeah.
I think the single family is much better as an asset.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been happy with it. And you do get some of those people. I mean, having a tenant for 5 years plus, and that's not unusual,
Yeah.
where that would be an unusual thing in an apartment typically.
Oh, yeah, they're much more transient, in the single
Yeah.
family homes. As I always say, the best tenant you can ever have is a nice family where their kids are in the school districts. They will like fight to stay there.
Right.
That's a great tenant. There are other great tenants too, but I just kind of particularly like that particular avatar because if their kids are in the schools, they're entrenched in the community, they're just going to stay. They're
Yeah.
just not going to move. And
And
yeah.
that was another reason the free lunch metric, quality of the schools was so important to me because if a family cares about that, if they really
Mhm.
care that the schools are
Yeah.
good, that just kind of speaks, I think, to just their commitment to life, right? And hopefully they'll be well
Mhm.
committed to my house.
Yeah. 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 Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, David Porter, thank you so much. If you're not seeing this on video, you're hearing it on audio only. He's got the Tesla electric semi truck on his virtual background. So that's very cool. And that speaks to how you were in the transportation business before you retired.
That's right.
And sounds like you're enjoying your retirement through income property. So that's
Yes.
fantastic. Good news. Good
Yes.
news. Anyway, thanks again for joining us. The third time on the show. First time was like 19 years ago. So great to have
Yeah.
you back.
An honor. My honor. Thanks, Jason. Good seeing you.
Thank you.